Hey, you guys, this is your host, DeDe, and we're so excited to welcome you to our next episode. Hey, everybody. Thank you guys for joining us here on the platform called Courageous Talk. We are so excited to have you as a first time person or maybe a returning person who is here on the show. And today we are discussing not only testimonies, but important information from our special guest who is none other than Miss Taryn Cadena, and welcome to the show, Taryn.
Thanks,
How are you
DeDe.
today?
Good to be here.
Awesome,
I'm
awesome.
good. I'm good.
I'm just excited because we have one sister that I've personally met who is a powerhouse on so many ends. And I will speak highly of this woman of God in so many instances, but she has made a great mark in my life and in so many others in more than one way. So I can say I met her back just a few years ago in church, and she actually was a great person that planted into my life, along with two other great sisters during that season of my life, who I will speak of, Miss Gina and Miss Claudia. Of course, we will, of course, save that part for later another time. But Miss Taryn Cadena, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, while we're into the show, I just want to go ahead and get to our first question. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. I just want to ask you first, because you're, of course, new to the show, but also to introduce yourself and tell us who is Miss Taryn Cadena, please.
Yeah, so I just want to first thank you so much for asking me. I know that we've thought about this for a while. We've talked about this for a while, and I believe everything in God's time. And so just thank you so much for having me today. Um, so it's interesting the way that you asked that question. Y'all, she gave me the questions before I stepped on here. So I got to think about most of them. I was like, got that, got that. But then when you said like, who is Taryn Cadena? I'm like, I had to ask my husband, do I answer this like metaphorically, like I'm a blah 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 blah, blah or do I, like how I'm a very direct person. So sometimes I struggle with it. I make things complicated that are very simple. And he's like, babe, you know who you are. I'm like, I absolutely know who I am. And it's funny because I didn't always. I
Right.
didn't always know who I was.
Mm,
I definitely, so the number one thing I would say, and I've given a little thought to this because I am an overthinker. And the number one thing I would say is I'm a believer.
mhm.
I know the truth of who the Lord is. And so that is probably the number one aspect of who I am today. And at least I want it to be. Sometimes I take over a little bit, but but my foundation is 100% in God. And then I think following that, it's I aim to be a good mom and a good wife. And one thing that is really true about me is I am driven by the Holy Spirit even before I knew the Lord. I grew up in church, and we'll talk about that later, but I didn't have a personal relationship with Christ, but he was still speaking, and it drives me differently. I don't know how to, I'll try to explain it later, but it's really like, I feel very compelled by the Holy Spirit. It doesn't take a lot for the Holy Spirit to convict me. And so when I'm not obeying, I feel like I just almost, it's just so uncomfortable. So much of what I do in my life and my career and everything is very much spirit led. And usually this back and forth of waiting to hear, is this me or is this you?
Right.
Because that's always a really big question. I want to be spirit led, but one of the things I've learned in my journey is that sometimes when we have such a vested interest in things or we want something, it's hard to tell what God led and what's led by me. So, I pray a lot about those things, but being led by the Holy Spirit and following how I feel led by Him is probably the second highest thing in my life. Like everything, and if I don't align with the Lord, He will take an action for me to align. Which is fascinating. That comes into my career too. I can't always tell, so I'll stay places too long. I'll do things too long. And then he'll be like, okay, I was trying to tell you this, and he'll move me into it. So who I am is definitely Christ-centered and driven by the Holy Spirit, and very much about my family. And I have to say my business too, just my career, because that's just such a big part of my story. It was how I identified for a long time. So before I really knew him.
Wow.
So it's a big part of my life too.
Mm. See, I'm glad that you said that you could not say that for a season, of your life. And now that okay, this is who I am. This is who I follow. And that's so, so important that we learn that as a whole, whether it be man or woman. So I'm glad that you said that. And that's a powerful answer to that question too, by the way. What was life like for Taryn?
So you mean like growing up, or I feel like there have been so many seasons for me. You know what I mean?
Right,
And
right.
it's different in every season. And it's different now. I guess I can, as soon as I say that, I'm like, what's different now is
Yes.
that no matter what happens, and I can tell you this,
Mhm.
no matter what happens, and things get stressful when you run your own business and when you don't know where money's coming from, and it's what I can say today is that what's different now is that I have a peace even in, no matter how crazy anything is. It doesn't necessarily mean like I lost a home in my old life. I like gained everything, lost everything, went through all these crazy things. But what is interesting is that it's like I can't say none of those things would ever happen again, right? I can't say that I'm always going to be financially profitable or whatever. We go through seasons that are really hard, but I can say that I have a peace knowing that no matter what's going on, God is going to give us what we need.
Amen.
And because before it was really hectic, life
Mhm.
was hectic. It was
Right.
dramatic
Mhm.
all the time. And I was lost
Yeah.
even when I thought I wasn't. When I thought, I'm drinking my coffee, even when I thought I had my direction down, I would have told you I knew my stuff back
Mhm.
then,
Yeah. Yes.
and I created so much chaos.
Mm.
And so today, the biggest difference in my life is that I always can access a peace. I can always choose peace.
Absolutely.
I say before, I didn't really have a choice because I didn't know any other way to live. People would say things like, choose blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, how do you do that? Now because I know the Lord, that's always available to me. I don't always choose it, but I usually get to that point where I'm like, oh yeah, this is a bad choice. Let's choose to rest in him and let
Right.
him, drive things rather than me worry, or like I can follow the word. Like, don't
Yes.
worry.
Mhm.
Before it was almost like a finger point to me. I'm like, how are you not supposed to worry? And
Right.
now I'm like, I'm like,
Mm.
oh, yeah, I don't have to choose to worry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it goes hand in hand with kind of like the question also goes hand in hand with your upbringing because like you said, this is how I was and now this is how I am. Excuse me. So give me a
Hmm.
second.
Yeah.
Okay. Excuse me. This weather has been ridiculous.
Oh no.
Excuse me. So, but we're gonna make it. All right. But that is, excuse me, so true. How did your business, and when I say your business, it's not your present business now, but being an
Yeah.
employee before getting to your own, how did that play, or how was it instrumental in
Yeah.
building
It was.
Taryn into who she is now and who she's confident to be at this present point now? How did the
Yeah.
field become so instrumental into Taryn
Yeah.
building and becoming Taryn who she is now?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I think too, one of the things that you really wanted was like what was it like even growing up and things, and
Mhm.
this kind of touches in that because when I started my career
Mhm.
20 years ago here in San Antonio, I
Okay.
didn't have any idea what I
Mm.
wanted to do.
Wow.
I don't share this with everybody, but I have a high IQ, but I don't have a degree. So I had such a hard time seeing past the end of my nose,
Mm.
making a long term choice. I had so
Mhm.
much trauma. So I came from this amazing family, growing up, that we're all super high achievers, and a lot was expected of us. But I had a very unfortunate trauma, really, really young, and I just struggled to really I deal with that,
Mhm.
and we weren't
Mhm.
in a time back then where we knew how to deal with that. It's hard today, even though we talk about these things so much more.
Right.
It's hard for families to process and deal with those things. And I was really little when it happened. And I can see now how it colored everything. And then as I grew up, there was another, I was the last of four kids left at home, and my parents divorced when I was like 9, and my mom remarried an alcoholic. Of course, she didn't know that, right?
Right.
And that really impacted. I had a lot of trauma experience with that as well, and so I think by the age of 13, I had my first drinks just to escape life, like you try them when you're a kid, and um that it was like I remember feeling like, oh, what an escape this is for me,
So,
and so it's really interesting because all of those things kind of compiled to this place in my life where I was always a high achiever. I grew up in theater, and doing all kinds of stuff. I was a singer, I was a semi-professional singer before I moved into my corporate life. And by the time I got married young, and by the time I had to go to corporate, and I say had to go because I had a kiddo. I had my first son, who is now just turned 21, which is insane. I'm trying to
wow.
adjust my volume here. Sorry.
No,
He was like a year old, and we moved here, and my husband I'm from Ohio, and my husband had a job here in Texas, and so we moved here, and maybe 2 weeks after we moved here, he loses his job. And so I had planned to stay at home. My whole pregnancy was about, I wanted to have a home birth. I wanted to do all these things. I was very much about my child. That's what my life was. My whole life was about growing this amazing human, and helping form him. That was where I found my value at that point, because I didn't yet know the Lord. And I found it in my marriage. I found it in my children. I found it in all these other places, trying to know who I was, and understand who I was. So I had to go to work. And that's like back in the day when you would look in the newspaper to get a job, like look for an ad in the newspaper. So I was looking for one, because as soon as I met people, I made an impact, but I didn't have any kind of great resume or anything like that. So I was looking for one that was like telling you to come in and meet them, that they would do interviews on site. I was like, okay, I got to find, so I found a receptionist position, I think $7 an hour. Okay. And it was like for a local construction company downtown. And I went in and I got the job. They hired me on the spot, and I did a great interview. And because I was very smart. I grew up in private school. I attended some college. I just could never stay together long enough to get a degree or to do the whole deal. Everybody else in my family did. I was the only one who didn't. Most people will be like, oh, I was the one that rose up, and I was the one that got a college degree. I'm the one who didn't.
Right.
So it's really, and because I just had so much baggage, I felt like that I was carrying all the time. I really just couldn't see 4 whole years of my life for something I'm not interested in yet, So I go to work for this construction company, and there was a woman there who changed my life. She was the VP of that company, and she said to me, I got a promotion after 30 days because I work my tail off. That was what I was taught by my dad, who's a football coach. You work hard. It's like being in the military, being a kid of a football coach.
Right.
And so I believe you can have anything if you work hard enough. That's like what I was taught.
Absolutely.
No excuses, work hard, show up, do the right things, and you can have anything you want. Like, that's what I believe.
Yes.
So after 30 days, I get this promotion. She makes me her HR assistant, and she sits me down. I get $2 more an hour, which is our only pay. That's the only money my family has. We have a baby. We have my husband and myself at that point, and $9 an hour. Right?
Wow.
Yeah, it was rough. And she sits me down and she says, "Do not leave HR. This other project management job is going to come open. It's going to pay like $12 or $13 an hour. You're going to don't do it. This is don't leave HR no matter what you do."
Wow.
So I fought it a lot, because I wanted more money. We needed to make ends meet. And my husband never really took another job after that, my first husband. So it was rough for us, and there were lots of other, substance abuse problems and things, and it was just tough. So, I built from that point. I just worked insanely hard to grow in my career. And the next company that I went to work for was an oil and gas company. And they reached out to this woman and said, would this woman applied here? Like, should we hire her? And she's like, I hate to lose her, but yes, you should hire her immediately. This would change her life. Yes. And so I instantly double my pay. I become an HR manager, and, it was a really quick trajectory. She taught me a couple of key things about my career, about learning things. And because I can always spot problems. And she taught me, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. And she wasn't joking, and she taught me come up with a few solutions, and then let's figure out what's right, what's best for this situation. And she really taught me problem solving through that, rather than just, oh, here's a problem, and I was kind of complaining. She framed how I functioned in the business world, because I wasn't yet super healthy and being able to do those things. Like, I look for a solution, or what she taught me, that's how to go about business. Wow. And I did it. And she also said, am not going to spoon feed you anything. How well you do in this will be determined by how much you learn, you teach yourself. You can ask me questions, bring me a group of questions, and I'll give you all the answers, because she was a VP level HR person. And so I wanted to ask her every question all the time. And she's like, I hired you to go figure that out. If there's something you can't, bring it to me. So she taught me this framework for functioning independently and building a career in something. And it just so happens, I always say God does these things. That is like HR is now, it's not so much anymore, but it was one of those careers where there wasn't a degree, or very few people had the degree at that point. People were like, office managers who had to process payroll, who then took on HR responsibilities and learned HR. That's
Right.
really a lot how that career started until recently. Now people have master's degrees and doctorates in HR. I mean, some of the most learned, amazing HR people out there, they really have some of the most amazing degrees. But for me, everything for me is my husband's telling me, make a correction on my microphone. Sorry. Hopefully this helps. Is it okay? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. It's kind of like a ruffle, like I don't know if it's a it's not a static, but it's like a ruffle sound, like a static. No, now you're completely off. I can't hear
Off.
you at all. Yeah. Okay.
Use my computer audio and see if that does anything.
Okay.
No?
Keep on talking. Say something. Just keep on telling us your story, and I'll let you know. Just keep on telling us your testimony. Can you hear me?
There we go. I can. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Okay. Okay. So, is it any better, or do you still have the same issue?
Keep on talking because I can't tell right now. When you pause,
Okay.
it won't
Sure thing.
show. Keep on talking.
Okay.
You're fine.
Yeah. So yeah, basically I built this career that it was all like kind of like the right place at the right time kind of thing.
Hmm.
And it allowed our family to grow and sustained our family when I don't know what would have happened. I was in denial about what was going on in my family at that time. I didn't know,
Hmm.
what to do. And so I stayed in that situation
Hmm.
for a really, really long time.
Hmm.
And so I really do feel like God gave me a career and gave me a career I could really grow and be successful in. And I became passionate about,
Hmm.
because what I learned, I ultimately became the interim director of HR for Methodist Healthcare Ministries. But I had a director over me for a period who taught me that HR shouldn't be the police.
Mm.
She taught me that HR could empower a workplace,
Wow.
or it could create that environment. Go ahead.
So real quick. Yeah, it's kind of like a static. Apparently,
Okay.
it's like a particular static. So I don't know if that's what he's hearing, but that's what I hear on my side. It's kind of like a static.
Let's see if I
Okay.
can hang. There we go. Is that any better? Okay. Can you hear me okay? Okay.
All right. I think we got it fixed, you guys. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I guess I just built this. I feel like God gave me that career and at the right time. And then I learned that HR could be so much more than the police, and kind of a lot of what I learned it was growing up in the industry. And then my career just kind of took off. I went to work for a consulting company, a huge payroll company, and that's where I started partnering with a lot of small business.
Hmm.
Um, and I really realized how much some of these things impacted them, how well they could hire would determine
And it's crazy. How well they could hire would determine how fast they could grow, for example, because so if you look at the stats from the Small Business Administration, this is crazy to me. And it took me a long time to put all this together because I thought of HR as like a handbook or as, disciplinary action or as all these things, which it is. But in whole, what we know today, which is a part of this, like really bringing these really learned people into this HR career today, we've learned so much, which is that how well you set up structures for your company for these things directly impact how successful you are. In small business, what I found was that HR was not usually the first thing they wanted. It was usually the last thing. And it's crazy because even now, I was recently at Launch SA, which is our local small business administration, like accelerator that helps small businesses get the resources they need and things like that. And I was saying, well, I offer these solutions for small businesses. And he's like, nobody asks for that. That's what he said. And I'm like, and I know this because who wants HR? Like we think about it, it's like, it's just not what they want all the fun things. But what I was trying to say is if you look at the statistics from the Small Business Administration, what's fascinating is that businesses who survive for 1 year, so most small business will go out of business in their first year of business because they just can't generate the revenue. I've been there, I've experienced it this past year. It is hard to build a sustaining business, right? So the companies that do that, after they get out of this year one, they usually go out of business between year 3 and year 7.
Wow.
Which means they make enough revenue to survive, but they're not able to generate enough revenue or stability to survive long term. And so when you're trying to stabilize your company and you're trying to grow beyond being like a solo entrepreneur, how well you do all the people things directly impacts how well you're able to grow and how strategic you are and what positions you're choosing to hire next directly determines if you're going to make money or spend money on people that were maybe that role wasn't a good choice at that, right? Do that too many times as a small business, maybe even just twice in a row, and you can't sustain it. Now you're in a position where it's like lopsided and you have this payroll and you're not generating enough revenue to cover it. And those are some of the things that put small businesses out of business. So it's fascinating when you really break it down. And then if you bring in the women and minority women-owned businesses, it killed me because so I worked with a women's business accelerator, and I helped minority women start learn how to sell their services in the corporate space. It was like a big passion of mine, and
it's like a what?
It was a big passion of mine.
Okay.
Yeah. And I paired with a woman that was on a board that I was on, and she started this accelerator, and she asked if I would help her, and I helped grow her first $1 million in business. And it was really fascinating because almost every woman, and these are professional women coming out of corporate, and maybe they're an engineer and they want to build an engineering firm, right? And they're going to sell their engineering services to other corporations. So almost everyone would say, I don't want to hire employees. I just want to build this. I want to do this. Maybe I'll do some independent contractors, but I don't want to build a whole corporation. And meanwhile, in the next breath, we're talking about how women-owned businesses and minority women-owned businesses make a third of what male-owned businesses make. But we don't want to hire anybody. 90% of women-owned businesses will never make one hire. And we wonder why it's generating so much less revenue. And this just became, you could probably tell, it became this passion point for me, saying, if we really want to solve these problems, if we really want to create, whoever you are, if you really want to create small businesses that succeed, we have to prioritize the way we manage people because they are the foundation that help us grow our business and scale our business. And I always come back to saying it's like a math problem because person can do this much, two people can do more, and but
Hmm.
if you have the right two people, you know, and so, yeah, basically I grew in 20 years in corporate in doing HR, everything from the bottom all the way to the top.
Wow.
I worked ultimately for an international company in leadership development.
Wow.
And so it's after 20 years of doing that, I ultimately felt led to leave and start my own business. But I'll pause because I know you have, you probably
No,
have.
no, no, no. You're fine. You're fine. Actually, even though you're answering the other questions, that's why I looked over is like, okay, she's already into the
Yeah.
next question. So perfect. No, no, no. You're perfect. Let God use you and flow because this is helpful to somebody that is a woman or a
Right.
man, and where we quote unquote think that we don't need. You're telling us what we really, really need to mature and to grow because we see growth and we want to mature and we want to get our millions and billions and reach here, reach there, start multiple businesses or branches. Let's deal with point one. Let's deal with step one. And that's an eye opener for me as well.
Well, it's logical. You know
Mm.
what I mean? And that's very much how my brain works. I break everything down. So that's part of, I also believe that's kind of uh, not a fruit of the spirit, but a gift from God. We have
Right.
gifts in how He made us as people. And one of
Absolutely.
my gifts is how I see things. It almost like breaks down,
Right.
and in the spiritual, like I can see things coming off people. And
Hmm.
in the workplace, I can see it's almost like it breaks into like a grid. Like this is a math problem, So I hear the stats, and
Right.
then I hear the women saying the same things over and over again, and
Hmm.
eventually I'm like, oh my goodness, this is what's going on, you
Hmm.
know. Um, and again, I already told you that it's like I'm a spirit led individual, and so when I am not doing what I feel called by God to do, or what I feel I'm supposed to be doing,
Hmm.
I get really uncomfortable. Now,
Absolutely.
I told you I had so much history of just difficult growing up and instability and all these things, right?
Right.
And so stepping out and starting my own business was not my plan. Like I
Okay.
did not ever plan. I always would keep a client or two on the side, people I knew that own their own business and to do HR for them,
Right.
you know, like just the structural stuff,
Right.
um, and that kind of thing. But I did not ever plan, so to start my own HR firm because
Right.
I really felt like I worked for those big companies. I spent 7 years working for a huge firm and I delivered HR services to small businesses
Mm.
and I made them a ton of money.
Wow.
But I didn't, I was like, how can I even compete with them? Why would I even start that? There's so much out there.
Mm.
I wouldn't have done that. By the time I stepped out, I would have started a business selling to corporate. That's what I had taught women how to do. That's where
Right.
the money is. That's
Mm.
the logical, smart way, especially when you know the system to make that work.
Right.
Starting a business that sells to small business, especially women and minority owned businesses that don't generate as much revenue, which I already told you, is not a solid plan for making money.
Right. 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 Right.
It's not
Wow.
smart business, you know?
Wow. Right.
Yeah, but
Wow.
I
Wow.
definitely felt like I I was continually, it was put in my face. These things
Mhm.
kept being placed into my radius, and like I couldn't sit there and do nothing and complain about it. Like I was telling you,
Absolutely. Right.
right?
Right.
Like from
Right.
the beginning when she taught me that, I was like, I need to act. I need to
Right.
figure out the next right thing. So
Right.
started by starting a company while working in my corporate job, like just
Wow.
doing, like just starting.
Mhm.
And then I was like, I kept hearing. I will hear specific messages, just
Mm.
like I see something come out, I'll like hear a very specific message. And it
Mm.
was, why do you keep building everybody else's business? Why are you not building the business that I have given you?
Wow.
And I was
Wow.
like, because that's uncomfortable. So I told you I have all this trauma. The
Yeah.
corporate space was the one place where I show up, and it doesn't matter how recovered or unrecovered I am. I'm good at what I do,
Wow.
and I can help you, and I make money. And by the time I stepped out of corporate, I'm making $250,000 a year. Why the heck am I going to
Right.
why would I
Right.
start a business with no capital? No,
Wow.
you know what I'm saying? Like, it just wasn't very smart. But I knew, I started remembering all these things. Like, the Lord will drop us Easter eggs, right? For years, He will
Yeah.
drop us Easter eggs,
Come
letting
on
us
now.
know what's coming, but not really telling us what's coming, letting us know what's coming. And then we think it's something else. Like, I think,
Mhm.
I hear like a couple years ago, I hear like, save your money,
Right.
start saving your money. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to start working for the church. I'm going
Mm.
to go into some kind of like ministry work. 100%
Right.
totally thought that's what I'm going to do. That's why He's
Mhm.
telling me this. Do I
Mhm.
listen? No. I don't
Wow.
say no money. I don't save
Girl.
my money. I don't do the things I'm supposed to do.
Oh, wow.
Um, and I stay in my corporate job. And at that point, I'm in a very huge corporate job that I feel, I would say, because at this point, that's back when I met you.
Mhm.
I am hearing from the Lord. Everything is like, I have this amazing life, but I did struggle to bring the Lord into my corporate job. And
Wow.
I would pray to Him every day. I would set timers. So I would pause in this day and say, where is God in this? Are you behaving as you believe?
Mm.
As a belief, how you talk and everything else. Are
Yeah.
you this woman of God
Mhm.
in your
Mhm.
corporate job? And I
Right.
will be frank with you. Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Right.
Sometimes my drive way overshadowed the Lord. And then I'd be like, oh, whoa, I'm spun out over here, upset about X, just like an unrecovered person that I help all the time get through
Right.
their junk. That's how I
Okay.
was in corporate.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it's because it's dog eat dog, right?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
in truth, so throughout this journey, you asked, one of your questions that you had asked me was like, how does Christ fit into this? Does this happen?
Yeah.
So I end up leaving my ex-husband after 13 years together and two beautiful, amazing children. And, um, and I'm highly successful at this point. Everything has changed. And I think that's probably why I felt like I could leave.
Mm.
And I'm a mess because what I had created as my foundation, which is my job, my husband, being a wife,
Excuse me.
being a good mother, like all those things were my identity because I didn't have an identity in Christ, and so my divorce happens and everything falls apart on me. Like, I don't know who I am and I can't keep it together.
Wow.
So ultimately, I end up in church on Easter. I'm one of those walk into church on Easter girls after, having not been in church in a really long time.
Right.
And because what really occurred to me was that I had given every other like religious belief or every other, concept of Trinitism, like anything. I was really like into this energy idea, like so many different things. I had all this rhetoric down for why I didn't even think that Jesus even ever existed. Like I was the enemy. I was like a tool of the enemy at this point.
Mm.
Um, and it's just really fascinating how what I heard was, did you really even give Christianity a try? Like, you grew up in it and you
Wow.
took for granted that you already knew what it was about, but you've
Mm.
given pretty much everything else a try. But do you even know the
Wow.
foundation of what it was that you were raised in?
Wow.
And I was like, to be really honest, I don't. And I
Wow.
wasn't going to just jump into believing whatever,
Mhm.
but I
Mhm.
was like, that really struck me again. Like, when something is right, I cannot just pretend like it's wrong. Now in my business, I have a saying called reality for growth's sake,
Mhm.
because I work with a lot of small businesses and I'm like, y'all, let's be in reality for growth's sake. We want to grow our companies. And if we're living, in this place of not reality delusion in any way, our business
Mhm.
is impacted by
Wow.
that. right?
Wow.
So now I have this whole like piece of it goes into everything. Like, what's
Mhm.
the reality of this situation? And we ask certain questions to determine that.
Mhm.
But, because so much along the way, we forget common sense. Even back, this is crazy, even back before all of this, I think I'm like 20 years old, and I'm getting a lot of tickets, and I'm driving and being crazy, and I run a stop sign,
Mm.
and I get it, right? And
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm like, why does this keep happening to me? Why do
Wow.
all these because I was getting so many tickets and so many problems, and I'm like, why is this happening to me? And I
Mhm.
directly hear, you ready? I hear, well, if you don't run a stop sign, you don't get a ticket for running a stop sign.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Oh, oh, so
Wow.
I'm responsible. I'm doing
Yeah.
this to myself,
Playing the
right?
victim and really wow.
And so I was able to have a little piece of reality early. Like, I mean, at that point, I'm probably 19 or 20,
Mm.
you know, and doing all kinds of things I shouldn't be doing because I still haven't figured anything out yet,
Yeah.
and that's why when I met my husband, he was like a safe haven for me that I grabbed
Mm.
onto. Um,
Mm. Okay.
mhm. And
Wow.
so, but the Lord would still speak into me. I didn't know it was him,
Mhm.
but like he would just speak directly into me. And so at this point, when I am considering Christianity all these years later, 2 kids and a divorce,
Mhm.
uh,
Right.
I really hear like, I did you ever give that a chance? And I was
Wow.
like, I have to be honest. I don't really even know who Jesus was. I don't know. I just created all these walls
Mhm.
because it was too much. And I had a
Mm.
really, really bad religious experience in college, where
Right. You froze.
there's almost like
You
these
froze. Yeah, you were frozen for a second. You said
Christian
in
cults,
college something had happened.
where,
Okay. It paused for a second.
yeah, I
Can you hear
had
me?
a really bad experience, like almost like hear me. Oh,
Okay. Okay.
uh-oh. Is it still like that?
No, no, you're fine. You're fine. Go
Okay.
ahead. It was telling me, I think it was saying my internet all of a sudden became unstable, and I think that's what's going on. But go ahead. You were saying you had an experience in college, and then that's where it froze you.
Yeah. What's really interesting is if I think about it, and I do
Mm.
think that these things happen to people that God has plans for their lives, so
Absolutely.
he tries to, the enemy tries so many ways to try
Mhm.
to distract us or shoot holes in who Christ is so that we
Mhm.
don't know who we are in him.
All right.
And so that happened to me in college,
Right.
and when I was really coming to this place of being frustrated and fed up with um sorry, my husband's messaging me trying to tell him, give me a word. I'm
Okay.
good. Okay, good. Your connection was lost, but I'm good. Great, thank you, honey.
All right.
um so it's I was lost and I was ready to consider Christ.
Right.
And so in comes almost like this cult kind of church. And I was so desperate for help, I think, that I step in there. But again, I'm not the kind of person that can be misled for very long.
Right.
So I was, you know what? This is too crazy. Christianity is too crazy. Y'all are crazy. I called
Right.
Christians crazy. I put up
Gotcha.
a wall and I was
Okay.
like, that's just so. At this
Mm.
point later in my life,
Uh-huh.
I placed some very strategic people.
Mm. Okay. You froze. Okay.
There's stuff. I'm frozen.
Okay.
Yeah,
No. Okay. But what
yeah.
happened? You
So at
said?
this point, this is people in my life who are
Uh-huh.
really solid and stable, and they are believers, and they're not crazy. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so not everybody is crazy then, right? Not every believer is crazy, and so
Mhm.
I allow myself to step into the church that we met at sprang from.
Mhm.
So there was a bigger church, and that's where I started. And I had this really, I started reading Mere Christianity by
Mhm.
C.S. Lewis.
Okay.
because I wanted to know who Jesus was.
Right.
And he taught me a couple of really important things, which is read the word. If you want to know who Jesus is, then learn what he said. You
Yes.
know, so I wasn't going to just jump on board because everybody else said it. I
Absolutely.
wanted to what was up. Like I wanted to figure it out for myself.
Mm.
I'm a smart woman, so let's get it. So
Yeah.
jumped in and I started going to mass to church, and then
Right.
during the week there was something called H2O on
Okay.
Tuesday night at that church, and
Mm.
you could go, you could pick what group you go to, and so I just stepped in. I saw a group, and it was called Breaking Free, and that was the group I wanted to go to. I like
Okay.
that's the group I was like drawn to. It's an
Okay.
8-week course. Da, 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 da. Well, week
Right.
one I show up and I missed week one, so it was week two. Well, I'm one of these very like meticulous people, like almost like I missed week one, therefore I'll catch the series next time, right? Like the next time, get in that group. So I'm going to this group, to this group. Excuse me. I'm attending all these different groups, trying to figure out what am I doing here? Who is this Jesus guy? Like
Oh,
that's literally how I felt. But yet
right.
I'm learning a lot, right? Because you show up and you pay attention and you want to learn, and the Lord will meet you where you are, and He will bring you the.
Absolutely.
So
Wow.
I'm in there and I'm like, what is up? What's this? So I'm at about 6 weeks of doing this, and I'm really just kind of like about it all. I'm like, eh. And everybody talks about, ask God for direction, ask God, and blah 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 blah. And I am sitting in their little coffee shop before the night activities began. Like you got to pick your group or whatever. And I am like, okay, God, you tell me, because I didn't know him yet. Wasn't sure who he was. You tell me where to go. They tell me that if I ask you, you're going to direct me. So tell me where to go. And I
Right.
didn't here, go to Breaking Free. And I'm like, I can't go to Breaking Free. It's week 8 of 8 weeks. I'm
Wow.
not on week 2. I can't go on week 8, right? Like,
Right.
I can't do that. And I hear him, he literally replies to me. I'm telling you, I'm either crazy or God speaks to me in sentences, because he says to me, you told me to tell you what to do and you would do it.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I guess it did. I guess I got to shut up and go to Breaking Free.
Oh,
At
wow.
that point, I'm pretty screwed up still. And I think I'm at church, like maybe I'm going to find a good guy. Maybe I'm going to, like, that's my motives. Like, I'm following the Lord, but I'm also thinking, like, I'm going to, whatever. So I'm all dressed up, how I look. I'm all in this fancy whatever. I go to this group. This is a group about breaking free of spiritual bondage, okay?
Wow. Wow.
A lot of what I teach today, I learned from the pastor that taught and created that class.
Wow.
So she ultimately became my mentor
Wow.
and my teacher. And so anyway, I'm in this class, and her best friend is teaching it.
Wow.
Her name is Sue, and she does a sozo. I don't know if you've heard of sozo, but it's basically she does this like "Where was Jesus?" sozo. So all these
Mhm.
people have gone through 7 weeks of dealing with the spiritual bondage that they're under because they are attached to traumas in their life, right? I
Right.
don't
Right.
do any of that. I show up to this class and everybody's bawling and doing all these things, and I'm just like in the last row, all in my
Mm.
pretty little outfit, like,
Oh, wow.
okay, let's do this, So I close my eyes and I
Mhm.
follow her journey
Mhm.
in this. Is she basically walks you through this whole, it's like almost like a meditation, and then
Mm.
she takes you to the most difficult place in your life, and I have one,
Mhm.
and she asked ask Jesus where he was,
Mhm.
and I'm like, yeah, I'll do that because I am angry still. I haven't
Right.
dealt with any of my stuff, and so I'm embarrassed now almost because the Lord, I really don't need to be embarrassed, but I'm embarrassed when I look back at how I approached the Lord. You know,
Wow.
this
Yeah.
is my who I love and cherish. It like almost brings me to tears, and I disrespected so
Wow.
poorly in my Like, I want you to tell me, MF. Like, that was
Right,
my,
right, right, right,
were
right.
you in this horrible time? And I'm like demanding to know, like yelling at him, and and they're
Right,
having
right,
some quiet meditation, and I am like, you tell me where you were at this time.
right,
And
right,
he
right,
shows up and shows me where he was. He was with me being injured and hurt and abused by this
right,
person. He was
right,
the one, like, everything I experienced, Jesus experienced.
right.
So I'm just bawling because I thought
Wow.
I felt, I had never really felt
Mm,
not alone, right? And so I'm just snots coming out like the ugliest cry that you can imagine. I
yeah.
don't have any tissues because I'm not prepared. I'm not
Okay.
prepared for this, right?
Okay.
And pouring out, and everybody's doing their thing, so nobody knows that I'm trying real hard to be quiet. So the
Wow.
class, and then the next thing I experience is then I physically feel Jesus, like, put
Wow.
his arm around me. His head is here. I'm here. I'm like sitting like this, like just bawling, and stuff's coming out everywhere.
Right, right.
And he comes up and he's like, I'm what you've been looking for. I'm
Wow.
never gonna leave you. I'm always going to be here, and you
Wow.
cannot do anything to break that. Like, I am here for
Mm,
you and what you need. And I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm done trying to do this.
yeah. Yeah.
I'm done trying to fight who you are. I'm done not believing. I don't understand XYZ still, but I don't care. I know who you are. Like, I met that man. I met the
Right.
man of Jesus Christ in my
Wow.
presence.
My Lord.
And
My
yeah,
goodness.
from that moment, that kind of becomes critical for me later,
Right.
because all kinds of churches, all kinds of experiences, and I won't get into that because it's not really pertinent, but there have
Right.
been times where, I have an experience with other believers that I'm like,
Mm,
what is up? Is this even legit? Like, is this whole Christianity thing even what is this? And
right.
I'm, well, what do I know that Jesus is the only Son of God. I know who he is, and I know that his word is is his gift to us.
Right.
And I know it's true. And so therefore people act like idiots. And that's just myself
Yeah.
included.
Okay.
And, and so it's been really, that moment and how much it seared into myself has really been the jumping off point for the rest of my life, I would say.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
know.
I mean, this is all good. That's so you're on point. So, Lord, I gotta go down the question list because you didn't went down. What? That's okay. That's good. That's good. I want to say thank you. Because we needed to hear this as well as when did you walk away from work and what took place to make you walk away, during that season?
Yeah. So I had been hearing I needed to step out of corporate
Mm,
for 2 years,
wow.
and I couldn't. I mean, I made too much money. I couldn't comprehend. It was the one thing through everything that was stable for me, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and so my big corporate job that I got laid off.
Mm.
And at that time, I should have started my own business because they give you money when you get laid off. Okay.
So
They give you
could,
money.
could we pause right there real quick?
Yes.
Sometimes, and you said so much before and to this point right here that is blowing my mind because the realism, and I love it because you're very transparent. You've always been that way, even when I've known you and met you over the years, is that we have always tried to put God in a box for so many instances and say, let's pick up God at our convenience. That's one thing that you showed me prior to this point. But then with you like knowing when God has told you to move and do something. And we're all, I believe, guilty of this, but I'm glad that you're saying this, is that God has been pushing you out the nest. Because that's the way I
Mm,
look at it. A lot of times we get so complacent and comfortable, and we don't believe that God is going to be our provider. But we're
Yes,
taking him with us. We're taking him with us, but we're putting him in that box. Go ahead, girl. You
you're
started
so
something.
you're so right. So back then, I was in this box of corporate.
Hmm.
I didn't, after working with so many small businesses and helping all these other women start businesses, I started another women's organization here called Women in Digital. I'd done so many things and I knew what the startup grind was. In
Hmm.
no way, shape, or form did I have any interest in that.
Wow.
I didn't even hear him saying that. He probably was for some time. I had people speaking, brilliant people telling me, and I'm like, no, that isn't it. Like that's not what I'm supposed to do. So when I did get let go, I thought it was because that place was so toxic, because it was. You know, corporate has its own set of toxic stuff, and you know, I the Lord did shape me quite a lot in that and showed me that I wasn't bringing him in to that space, and like he used that to show me how to grow and how to tell when I really am including him and when I'm not, right? Like he used that for so many things. So I'm grateful, and I always say that I'm grateful in all the things
Yes,
because he uses them all, you
yes,
know,
absolutely.
for not just for my good, but for my good, but for
Yes,
everybody. Like
absolutely.
it will be it's amazing. So
Wow.
that happens, and I don't think I'm supposed to start a business at all.
Mm.
And but I also know that probably the company I go to work for next isn't the right company either. Like I can tell. And I'm like,
Mm.
well, but it's time. The money's running out. It's the job market today is not the same as it was then. And I couldn't even. I skipped a piece of my career, which is really in business development. So I kind of went from I'm in HR to I help these women start businesses. But there was this whole piece of my career where I
Right.
moved into this business development aspect of the role that I was in for this huge corporation. So I
Mhm.
learned quite a lot about how to build a business, how to grow business, the financial side of business, which many HR people they have a most of they're like personalities that really fit well into HR, and um, they have a lot of specific struggles in the corporate space because of those personality types, and they don't speak the same language as a CEO, and the CEO wants to talk about money and HR wants to talk about the people side of things, and like it's really fascinating. So I am one of these people who speak both languages just because of the way my career was built in business development about
Right.
halfway through. And
Wow.
so I saw this happening and I still was not feeling that I was supposed to be starting a company. I just didn't get it at all. What's cool is that what's cool is that I learned during that time of being out of work what a life that is devoted to him day and night looks like. Because to not be panicking,
Excuse me.
poor thing, you
Yeah,
okay?
that's okay. I'm fine. I'm fine.
Not
Go
be
ahead.
I should tell you a story about that. Leading worship, I've had that happen to me when I had to lead
Yes.
worship. That's like that I had to. One of our prayer people had to teach me how to refuse the enemy, basically access. It's really interesting, but exactly what was happening, I would have happen
Right.
multiple times. Worship. But anyway, um, so back to I had this great experience of learning what it felt like to be with the Lord all day. So I had a schedule in my day to look for work, but also everything was built around him. So like all these recovery things I've learned, I'm putting them in my whole day. And I'm
Mm.
building my day around the Lord and my time with him. I'm building my job search around that. Every single thing I'm doing is built around the Lord so that I'm not panicking because I'm the primary moneymaker, right? Like I don't have a job. Yes, I have money for right now, but I gotta, there's this pressure when that
Right.
happens. So
Right.
I need the Lord to know that. So when I take this next job, which was a terrible, I'm immediately thrown into the difference of
Mhm.
living with the Lord all day, every day, to being in something else.
Mhm.
And I literally couldn't say. I didn't know how it was going to how the shift was going to be made, but I thought that another company was going to hire me was really what I thought was going to happen. I started my company in January because I was helping another friend on the side with her startup. I was helping do like HR stuff for her. And I was like, I don't really want to, I want to own my own business. I don't want to do this as an employee for you because I'm an employee of somebody else. I just felt kind of funny. I was like, I want to do it on the side and I want to own my own business and finally like really get an EIN and do all that. So I did this all while working, but it was on the side, so, but I kept hearing the Lord, like, why are you building somebody else's business? Why aren't you building this business? And when I did this, I was asking him, why am I starting a business? What's the point of me? And that's really where the name of my company came from. So like, honestly, branded HR is the name of my company. And the whole point of this is that if you're a believer, right? This happens a lot with believers. We have a lot of believers own their own companies. Now, when it comes to disciplining an employee, do they act like Jesus is driving that bus or are they driving that bus? Like being in business, just like I'm talking about with me in the corporate space, we see this every day with these women with purpose, and they have they're like creating these businesses that can change the world, but how they treat their people directly, especially when things aren't going well, it's like all this stuff that they believe in goes out the window. And now we're treating people not well, we're letting people go, we're doing all these things, but we haven't done the basics on our part because we don't know. It's not their fault. Nobody ever taught them. Just like we inherit our toxic stuff, that we grew up in, and like we bring that into our adult life. We do the same thing with our businesses. The toxication, all of the things, they stay and we have a driven interest in our business. So like they're almost worse over there. Small business can be one of the most toxic places. Churches can be one of the most toxic places to work because there's so much at stake to be there. And so, but what I felt like I heard the Lord saying is, let's show them. Let's show them. Let's show them they can. Let's teach businesses. And I was like, but nobody wants to learn. Nobody wants to do this. Like, I'm not going to be the bleeding deacon out there trying to convince people. I don't. Absolutely. I know that from recovery. And I heard the Lord like, I'm going to build a new business. He's going to build a new business, and we're going to reach the new business owners who are willing to learn, ones who are not new as well, but the ones willing and that are hearing the other messages. It's like all comes together. And that to grow successful businesses that actually are true to who they say they are as an individual and what they believe, whether it's Christian or not. It's like we have these ideals that either align with everything we do or they don't. And they don't realize that they can if you have a system in place, a framework in place for these strategic questions to make sure that you're doing the things that align with what you believe. And so that is 100% where the passion started from, or from where the passion started, and really to the point where I was working for this company and I was just like, even my paycheck was being taxed incorrectly. And I'm an HR. I'm a VP of HR at this point. So I can tell you exactly what needs to happen. I built payroll systems and 100 different things. And so watching it without being able to influence it, I knew it was time. Like I'm at the point where I shouldn't be watching anything like that I can't impact. I need to be able to make a difference. That's one of my keys. I learned this years ago. Being able to have an impact and make a difference was a key motivator. And so while I may have been in this high role, I wasn't able to do what I am called to do. And I couldn't last. I literally couldn't last. So, yeah. And then I got sick. And we thought I was dying of a blood cancer. Seriously, I'm not even kidding you. The Lord gives me a little bit more. This whole time last year, I was going in January. Turns out I had taken a medicine in 2018 that had basically stayed in my blood, and I had too much iron in my blood that I couldn't get rid of. And so my liver was having to filter that for the past, 6 years. And so
Wow.
I had a sister, and I didn't have this rare blood disease, thank God. But when
Thank you,
you
Jesus.
literally think you do,
Right.
you look at, if this is it, like if I have however many years, even though I'm only in my 40s, I only have however many years. I'm not doing what the Lord said, and that
Come
is
on.
just not faith,
You
and
better
He is
preach, Taryn. You better preach.
yeah. Yeah. And
But
I felt it. I felt the conviction of the Holy Spirit,
yeah,
and I couldn't stay. I couldn't keep myself. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
and it's hard. When you have these moments,
yeah.
all of the smart stuff in you, you don't get to listen to it anymore
Mm,
because it's not smart. What we consider smart in that, like it's smart and XYZ, but it's not smart to not follow the Lord.
absolutely. Come on now.
He just, like and it's not like what's interesting. So this is a good topic of conversation. What's
Mm,
interesting is that the Lord calls us. You can tell the difference between something the Lord calls you in that is um, unusual, right? Not smart
right,
in a bad way.
right.
Like if He's the one calling you, or if He is, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like,
Yeah,
how do you know if it's just stupid or if it's the Lord calling you, right?
yes, yes.
It's the Word. The Word of God is the direction to live your life by. It's the foundation. Does it align with what the Lord says in the Word?
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
and so um, all these things that are happening, the characteristics of those things that I'm going along with these other companies, they don't align with the Lord. The calling of what I'm supposed to be doing and standing up for. I am a person who stands up for other people. I am a
Wow.
person who stands up for truth. My husband calls
Yes,
me Taryn. Like that's his nickname for me, Taryn Truth. And like that, because I will defy everything to the point of the truth,
yes,
because I, at this point,
yes.
and so I'm at this place where I'm like, I'm just trying to make it to the next paycheck because I don't have the money saved.
Right,
You know,
right,
I didn't prepare like the Lord instructed. I didn't think that day would ever come.
right.
You know, and so
Mm,
He carries us anyways. He carries us anyways and helps us get
wow.
through those times. And I finally just said, I told the woman who ran the company, I just said, thank you so much for this opportunity, but this isn't. I've personally had a major health scare this year, and I don't want to. This just isn't the right fit. That's it.
Yeah,
I think that's
yeah,
what the right fit.
yeah.
So she had a string of people leaving, and like those ones where the relationships are ruined and everything. I was like, that ain't gonna be me
Right,
because
right.
but I'm not gonna, because what's important is that I'm being true to the Lord
Yes,
and not wasting the rest of my life in this space, because He's given me a gift in career to be able to see the HR and people side of things and the money side. What's
mm,
crazy is that the two are not separate. The two are
right.
not separate. We hear for years that HR is like a cost of doing business. And I'm like,
Mm,
I get you, because when you do it like we've been doing it, that's
yes,
how it is. The cost of doing business. And it's like, it's the last thing anybody wants to do. But when we accept the truth that by doing business in this way, we have a viable business, that this is the reason that we can grow stable businesses,
yeah,
or that we are pretty lucky if we don't have those things in place, that we were able to grow business, right? Like
right,
that's the truth, is that we got lucky with a couple good hires, or you know what I mean? We get lucky with some of these things.
right.
Some of these people cause problems. Nobody sued you.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's luck, not your
Mm,
piece. Maybe you know what I'm saying? Like,
yes, yes.
and when we start connecting these things and being intentional, just like we're intentional with our walk with Christ,
Yes,
just intentional with our development, when we're
yes.
intentional about developing our people, everything changes.
Wow.
Everything changes. The whole, you can't contain a business that is
Mm-hmm.
built on those foundations. You can't,
That's right.
and so this, it's the financial side is directly tied to how well you do these things when you utilize a system. It's not just emotionally driven. It's all about being intelligent, following the dollars and the strategy of growing people.
Wow. Wow. That is so amazing.
Yeah. So ultimately, I stepped out. The Lord carried me, and some people I had helped and served brought me clients, so that was amazing. And then when it was time to move on from those clients, the Lord showed me, like, I just follow Him in my career now, in my business now. There have been times where I'm like, I don't know where this mortgage is coming from, and He will. I hear like I need to rest in Him. I need to do the next right thing, right? I
Yes.
need to ask, and I need to do the next right thing He puts in front of me. I'm in a
Yes.
season where I hear, like, I'm growing the digital side of my business, and that is a whole new thing. I'm a Gen
Wow.
Xer.
Right.
As much as I love all the tech and stuff, I'm not a tech genius, and I can screw all this up real quick. Like, you've seen it today.
Oh,
You've
wow.
seen it today, right? Like, is the reality. Now imagine this. This woman has built huge digital systems so that I can access lots of small businesses, help tons of small businesses. But I don't know how to get those out to the public. So I've gotten lucky in a few ways, and I'm working to get strategic in how to get these things out to the people that the Lord has for me to get them to. So in the meanwhile, I'm like, okay, you live in this small little area of Helotes. You need to take flyers to all these businesses and ask them if they need a handbook. Because how
Right.
quick system for that too, of course. So like, go
Absolutely.
make some, go do the next right thing, and keep following this digital plan, because anything worth doing is worth going all the way into and figuring out. Like, it's
Yes.
not about getting right the first time. And if you
Right.
you ask me in the questions, like, what would you give to people? Like, what kind of advice would you give to people in business that may be
Yes.
struggling? Don't expect it to be easy. If you are following the call of the Lord, don't expect it. You should expect resistance. You
Yes.
should expect. Now, I expect to do well, okay? Like, everything. I expect I'm going to be at the top of everything when I launch this, whether I know what I'm doing or not, is going to be the most successful. So when it's
Right.
not, like, shift. And then I'm like, okay, but I know that it's not a quitting time.
Right.
It's a shifting time. I know that I don't know everything, and it makes sense that I didn't get this right the way I wanted to. And
Right.
now I'm going to have some more space to hear whatever I've missed so far, and
Right.
I'm going to keep going. But to meet, expect to meet conflict. Expect it to be hard,
Yeah.
and do it anyways.
Yes.
Expect and persevere.
Yeah.
Jesus' most difficult task, he ended up needing someone to carry the cross, right? Like, I'm not trying to compare myself with Jesus. Please do not hear that. But my point
We
is,
got you.
we watch, right? We watch him and we model him, and we should expect these things. Like, that is impossible for any of us to do. We needed Jesus to do this. And so, like, we should expect in our life that not that following him and doing what he calls you into means it's easy. It means you're going to face the most difficult challenges of your life.
Right.
And I have been through some stuff, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how do I say this is some of the most difficult stuff? But I'm going to tell you, it's difficult on a whole other level. It's like
Yes.
difficult in a whole different space than I've experienced difficult. It's difficult in an area that was easy for me before, which makes it more difficult, right? Like, I didn't have the college degree yet. I could be all the things. I could. And, I think the Lord has used this to humble me in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
And bring me back to the servant's position of serving small businesses, serving, minority and women-owned business, just serving. And rather than being like a thing in corporate, which
Right.
was what I want.
Right.
And so, but we should expect that is going to be a challenge. And when we are challenged, we should turn to him first. And I hate to say the word
Absolutely.
should, but
Yeah.
my goal is to turn to him. My prayers a lot of times are, Lord, show me more quickly Help me see it more quickly.
Yes.
You're showing.
Yes.
Help me
Yes.
see it, recognize it more quickly, so I can turn to you and rest in you when I'm going through these things.
Right.
Help give me the messaging. So I read the word all the time, and then like there are other things I follow intentionally too, so that I'm being fed the right messaging all the time, so that I can persevere. If I don't have the foundation in the Lord, and then the support, like we have supports in our communities, like a lot of people go to church for support, all these things, small businesses have small business support groups, like I intentionally fill my feed with the things that are going to feed me so that I can meet my challenges.
Yes.
Motivational about hitting walls and not quitting,
Yes.
I make
Yes.
sure that those things are coming into me. And I just don't quit. When I had
Absolutely.
the difficult recovery areas, like I used to be a smoker, I'm not proud of it. That was the last thing. It took me the longest to quit smoking. And I would say, and I would start smoking again. I'm like, dang it. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just not quitting. I don't know if this is going to be the time, but I'm not going to, it can happen as many times as I need, because I'm not quitting until it's it. That's it. I'm not quitting. Right. So I'm not quitting following him. I'm not going to get it right all the time. That's not an excuse to get it wrong.
Yes.
But it's the truth that I'm infallible. He knew this.
Yes.
Now move on and stay. Like, we can get sidetracked.
Yes.
But
Yes.
don't get sidetracked. Accept the challenge is going to come.
Yes.
It's going to challenge you. That's why it's a challenge. It's going to make you question things, and I just ask God, help me recognize that quick, so I can remember the truth.
Yes. Absolutely.
And then I repeat the truth. I have, not only do I have it coming into me, I pray it out to him. I write.
That's good.
I know the truth of I have the word in front of me in different places. Right in front of me, this is not the word, but I have a little phrase that says, I am aligned with abundance. Right? I'm not aligned. And I talk a lot about alignment because I want to be in alignment with the Lord. Right? Because a lot of times our problems come from being misaligned with what the word says and what our belief is. And so, I know that there are old beliefs that I've had that can, when it's my own business, that I can be limited. Where I wasn't limited in corporate, I can be limited in my own business because of my limiting beliefs.
Right.
And so being able to acknowledge that and intentionally combat that with the word and other just constant resources of truth and support, and just knowing that you're going to do what you're supposed to do. You're a warrior. We are warriors of God.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Of God. And no matter how anybody else acts, no matter what happens at the end of the day, I am called to do this, and I'm going to do it.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. That is so good. I'm so proud of you, Miss Taryn. And I know, I mean, you've been at this for years, but I just humbly want to say I'm proud of you because um, it is so true that we get so comfortable and then we get so it's good to have goals. It's good to have goals, but don't forget sometimes there's that stumbling block that will come, but don't be moved by the stumbling blocks. I believe the scripture says don't let none of these things move you. So when you let things move you instead of and I know I take this scripture to my own level, but let the redeemed of the Lord say what? So if you're gonna come at you, so that's just my, sometimes I'll put a pause in it, my way with that scripture, not saying to read it out of context, but sometimes it has to click like that to know that, hey, it's gonna be stumbling blocks, but it's gonna make you stronger. You don't have to stay, oh man, I'm gonna be defeated. I can't reach that particular goal. No, you're gonna reach it. Just go with the flow and depend on God.
Yes.
Depend on God. Go ahead.
Truth is the truth, regardless of what the current situation is.
Yes.
Right. So I say this to people a lot in recovery. Okay. So like we get into arguments about things like the Bible and what it says about this or what it says about that, because the Bible is very clear on some subjects we don't like to bring forward. Okay.
Right,
And
right.
my is always this, and you just hit it. Okay. The word is absolute truth,
Absolutely.
whether I can meet that standard or not. Because
Yes.
I am not able to do what he is calling me to do does not mean the word is not accurate. Okay. The
Absolutely.
truth doesn't, because I can't do it, or because I don't like it, or because it doesn't fit in with my plan. The word says what it says, right? And when
Absolutely.
God speaks to you and
Yes.
gives you purpose or a call or a cause,
Yes.
that doesn't change because you meet obstacles.
Yes.
That doesn't change because you don't know. Some of the things that he has given me as a calling that I didn't know at the time. Like I was set to start this women's, and I knew nothing. I was starting, like, I would have done like lunch and learns because I'm like this Gen Xer, and that's how I had everybody meet at this restaurant. We're gonna do these lunch and learns. Thank God there was a millennial there, and she's like, I believe in what you're saying. I love how you're speaking it. And she's like one of the largest social media people in San Antonio. So Women in Digital blew up. Girl, there were no lunch and learns. Okay. There was like really meetups, and like I had to learn how to use Eventbrite and all these different things.
Wow.
God
Wow.
be what it was. It didn't matter. I had no experience in creating anything. I step out trying to be obedient in the way I know how, and the Lord meets me there with the people that need to do those things because I'm clueless, and this is His plan.
Wow. Wow.
Not,
Yes.
now, I think I can also tell you that in my mind, there have been things that I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to, because I spent all this time as a professional singer, I'm supposed to be a worship leader. And
Okay.
the atmosphere literally moves. And so therefore supposed to be worship. That does not mean that. I don't decide what God's plan is. God decides what his plan is. Okay. And so sometimes it's like the enemy getting in your way and whatever. But when it's God's plan, that is not going to happen. Like you do your part and God meets you there and takes you the rest of the way.
Come on now. That's so
not
true.
what we want. No, I want to be a worship leader in that space when I'm there because that's what I believe and that's what I know and that's what I'm comfortable with. Years later, it says to me, what if you got that worship leader position? You wanted a year into recovery. You would never have become the recovery leader that I would never have learned any of the stuff I learned in recovery because I couldn't meet that aspiration that I had, that calling that I felt. You know, I do still to this day. Everything in my space shifts when I start to worship Him. I mean, there's just He has other things, and no matter what skills we have or don't have, if His choice is, if this is His plan, you step out because He may find somebody else to do it, right? You don't step out, He may find somebody else. So make no mistake, it's not like no matter what you do it or don't do it, it'll still happen. No, it may happen without you, but
Absolutely. Come on.
don't be afraid that you don't have the skills or the whatever to do it. The money, time, anything, whatever it is. If the Lord's hand is on it, it will prosper in the way that He has for it to. And His hand is on it, but He only intends for it to be a season. His hand may be on it, but it's, we just don't know. We try to put our limitations around it, forgetting that there's this bigger picture for all of children and us. And so, I learned so much from doing Women in Digital, and I've just learned so much from all of it. And my greatest gratitude today is, I just told this to my husband, and is that, like, I can't say that those same exact things wouldn't happen. I run my own business, and you don't always know where the money's coming from.
Absolutely.
And I have built a very expensive life, and so it's always very real. However, none of those things determine who I am in the Lord, or what my value or what my calling is, or what my next step even is.
Right.
It's just not. They're
Wow.
not related. And it wasn't like that. I didn't know this until I took a step back.
Mm-hmm.
I used to try to convince people. I learned this when I was teaching the Fruits of the Spirit class that I taught at City Tribe.
Mm-hmm.
There
Mm-hmm.
was, when I was exploring the Hebrew fruits of the Spirit, the words in Hebrew, versus what we have those words to mean in English. So how the Bible uses words versus how we use those words. Like this was almost like a download the Lord gave me. And one of the things I also did was I explored the ways of the flesh, those words in Hebrew,
Wow.
and versus how we use them, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And one of the things I learned about myself was I'm a campaigner. That's a way of the flesh. That's a way of the flesh. Now, there's a lot of, and a lot of us, you can see it in a lot of different believers. Some of them, because we're all just have different ways of the flesh and different fruits of the spirit popping around all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's really, to see how people that are led by the Spirit want to convince people because we are so passionate about the Lord and what He's done. But what we have to learn and trust is that our job is to do the next right thing, and it's the Spirit's job to convict somebody, right? Like,
Right.
it's not my job to convict anybody. It's not. I'm not here to campaign for anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I found myself campaigning for myself.
Wow.
Campaign, not like because I feel like this journey that I've been on is so amazing. It's so authentic. It's so true.
Yeah.
I want you to believe me. I want you to know me. You're all these conservative Christian people that may never have had a drinking problem or some of the other problems I had before I knew Christ, and that you'll think I have a pretty shady past. So I want you to know and see me this way. The problem with this, when we live in the ways of the flesh, that doesn't feel authentic. So no matter what, no matter how authentic your experience is and your want for people to understand and see that, what do they see? They see someone trying to be, right? They see someone I already am that, but I want you to see.
Yes.
I want that.
Yes.
I want you. And therefore, coming off as one of the most common, I heard this from a behavioral analyst, and my head broke open, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I caused so many problems for myself in the church because I wanted to show you what I experienced. I wanted to show you the transition I had made. I wanted to explain it to you. I wanted you to believe me, right?
Right.
And see this broken person that did these things. I wanted you to see me as whatever. And as soon as someone starts trying to do that, they take on the exact same characteristics as a liar. Campaigning isn't the Lord's work. It isn't. He makes, our job is to do the next right thing, and his job is to carry it through to fruition for us, right? To put us in, maybe that whatever isn't for me right now. I don't need to be accepted by everybody. I don't need to be loved by everybody. The people he has for me will hear my story and know. I won't have to convince people that I met Christ.
Absolutely.
I won't have to do any of those things because they will hear me and be like, that, I get that. I hear her. The people who don't want to hear, who aren't open, and that's just not for me. And that's okay. He will in his way. He will reach them and speak to them. They're still just as good and valid people.
Yes.
They're just my people to speak to.
Yes.
I didn't get it. I wanted everybody to know because it was such a change in my life and it was such a shift. And I almost felt like I deserved it, I think.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
Because as who goes through all this becomes this whole new person. I mean, the story is crazy. How can you not? How can you still put me here? Right? How can you? And it's because I wasn't trusting the Lord. It was another of trying to rest myself, trying to create when I've already clearly said that the Lord will make this space available to you if it's for you.
Yes.
Right. So when he closes us out of those things, we hear these things and we say, oh, yes, the doors that close, let them close. The doors that open, let them open. No, for real, though.
Right, right, right,
Truly, them
right.
close because those people
Yes,
can't hear. You're not for them.
yes,
Let it,
yes.
and the door step into and be authentic to who you Christ has made you, and they will hear you and receive you, right?
Right.
And that also I've heard one of our favorite pastors give a sermon on this. Like be as I think he says as shrewd as a serpent and as gentle as they're a dove or a lamb or something
Yes,
like that.
yes, yes.
Because we be intelligent and smart and use our brain when there's we don't want to accept falsehoods as truths and
Mhm.
all these things, right? But we
Right.
also don't want to mistreat other believers being stepping into their callings.
Yeah.
And that's such a movement for me. When I heard him say that, I'm like, he's
Yes,
right. How many times
yes,
have I done that? I would complain about that happening to me. But how many
yes.
times I done the exact same thing, not realizing it,
Mm.
not somebody because probably they want to be believed, right?
Excuse me.
They
Mm-hmm.
want to be, they have the same thing. Yeah, like it's so it's fascinating, and I think that this compassion of Jesus, this compassion that Jesus had for
Mm-hmm.
people,
Yes.
it was his response to almost everything
Wow.
in the temple when
Yes.
the where the Pharisees are judging Jesus because he heals the man on the Sabbath, right?
Right.
They're judging him, and Jesus can hear their hearts. He hears
Mm-hmm.
their judgment, and he
Right.
is angry. His response is anger, and in the same verse, it's like a breath. In the next breath, he's like grieved by it, and praying for them, asking the Lord, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like this is what we're called to do, not to have judgment against others, but to be
Yes.
grieved by the Holy Spirit for the struggle,
Mm-hmm.
right? For the
Right.
fact that their hearts are so hard, right? That
Mm-hmm.
was Jesus's motivation. His anger
Yes.
immediately followed by this grief at the hardness in their hearts. We get the anger and then hold on to that as a righteous anger,
Yes.
judging fellow believers, judging everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But the Lord's example shows us it's this the grief, this compassion. There's a compassion
Mm.
that I would like to have more of.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Girl, that is so, so informative. And earlier you was talking about, we could be replaced. And I reflected back on the passage of Esther because Vashti was replaced. She was the queen, but she was replaced because it's something to be obedient to the king. And we're talking about the King of Kings in this case, especially when you're trying to ask God to order your steps, to give you divine, structure, wisdom, knowledge, and so forth. But at the same time, like you also said here at the ladder, let me check myself at the same time. Let me see what I'm doing. Where am I at? Girl,
Any
you are
check you get else, you need to check yourself.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
That's the only way to
Mm,
maintain kind of humility because we do hear from the Lord, right? We
absolutely.
He will speak over something going on, right?
You're right.
But then my next breath has to be, Lord, first of all, like judge me
Yes.
just as harshly and show me what you want for me, right?
Right.
And then
Right.
what do you want? And I'm brought to humility, a place
Yes.
of humility to respond to this
Yes.
judgment I see of his,
Yes.
like whatever it is I see. And
Yes.
or maybe it's not a judgment, maybe it's just him showing me something that I would have perceived as a judgment until I see myself up on the judgment block,
Right.
right?
Right.
Now I'm like, oh, we just need some grace,
Right.
right? Like,
Right.
oh,
Right.
they just prayer,
Right.
you know,
Right.
um,
Right.
like
Mm,
that.
mm,
I really
mm.
feel like that has to start being how we attain humility is
Absolutely.
by see that, show me how I do. If there's like, what do you got for me?
Yes.
then we are humbled to do the next right thing that he is showing us for them. Because if it's so easy to point out what other people do wrong, you know, like so easy. That's why I love the HR side, because that's what I think of HR a lot in the world. It's like
Yes.
these almost like school teacher policey kind of
Yes.
environment.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
with kind of attitude, it's not. It's about, okay, I have compassion for you.
Mm-hmm.
I have that this is how you feel like business should be.
Mm-hmm.
And the experience that must create for you and everybody around you, that I feel for you because I've been there.
Yes.
And
Yes.
at the same time, you have this goal to XYZ, right? To
Right.
create this thriving business. And
Mm-hmm.
those two math problems don't add up, or they may add up, but you're not going to feel good at the end of it. How many business owners have I stepped in with my HR knowledge to get them out of a legal bind?
Mm.
Not because it's like the right thing to do, because that's what I'm paid to do, you know? And so now I'm like real careful about who I do business with, because the same knowledge, grow and build the company, can help somebody. I mean, half my career was spent helping people because they call you later. They call you when they don't do it right, and now they're in trouble and they're worried. And they're trying to call me because I'm a third of the cost of an employment lawyer.
Help us today.
Help me not
Help.
get in trouble.
Help us today.
Right.
Ooh.
And so
Okay.
I have a compassion for that when our heart is to build the business, to do the thing, not when our heart is to get out of trouble for something we saw coming and didn't want to, like, we want to treat people bad. We want our own little kingdom. That happens a lot in small business, right? And so people mistreat workers. They let their, junk run wild in their small business. And some of their junk is actually really like, the same things that that are like personal struggles or spiritual struggles made me a really great salesperson back in the day, right? I could sell stuff XYZ. And so now to me, that's a spiritual struggle that I don't misuse, whatever,
Absolutely.
But know that as a business owner, and they can be super successful in a business and be super emotionally. So we a lot, because the most driven and determined businesses succeed enough to get to a point where they have HR, right? So like my whole purpose was to create digital solutions you could afford. Like you don't have, not even owning a business, and to get them out to masses to the point where it like pays the bills, because I'm selling it to so many people that whether it's 20 or whatever, they're still getting everything. They're getting me on this like large level. And then I'm personally with these companies of purpose that want to put this all the way into the foundation of their business and build companies and nonprofits. Hopefully, I haven't had one of those yet, but that want to their end result with their belief.
Right.
So,
Quick question. So what is the name of the system called again? Because I know you're saying digital system, but if anyone wants to connect with you and find out what's the name and how it can apply or assist their business, what is it called again?
Yeah, so it's funny. So the current launch is the Ultimate Hiring Success System. And this is essentially, I call it, like, I don't even know how to describe it well. It's an online course, okay? And it's me in every module. I'm an HR person, so I give you all of the different legal tools that you need. So you have a legally reviewed application form, all the tools that you need to build a solid hiring system, right? But this is about so much more than just checking the HR boxes. It's about understanding what goes into a solid hire. And these are the things that even big companies do not understand. A lot of times you'll see them hiring and hiring and hiring. I think I told you this stat. I think it's 96% of small businesses are going to hire in the next 6 to 12 months. And a quarter of them will rehire the same position within 6 to 12 months because they made a bad hire. So this is it's almost like an epidemic for small business. And we realize it. And a big part of this is that either we don't have any systems in place and we're just hiring willy-nilly. That happens all the time.
Right.
But another thing that we see a lot of is that we have a system, like we have a process. Maybe we don't have all the forms legally reviewed or whatever, like, but we've been in business. We know how to have it hold an interview, right?
Yes. Right.
But we aren't identifying the characteristics that are going to make someone successful in our business working for us in that job. Like there's a whole string of questions about characteristics of a person. What characteristic traits does it take to good XYZ, right? So like,
Right.
does this? I just had this conversation with another HR consultant who was
Okay.
building an consulting firm, and she
Mm.
had a worked for her who was an amazing HR person, but
Mhm.
she didn't function very well creating independent systems. So
Mm.
when something came up, she would struggle and flounder. And when we don't know what we're doing next, we just kind
Yes.
of put a lot. We put
Yeah.
things off, we put things off, and now I've got this list of things I haven't done.
Right.
Because I don't know what to do next. But I know
Right.
my but I don't really know. My strength isn't like operating in a completely open architecture. Like I need a structure, right? Everybody's different. Now, so she was a great HR person, but she wasn't great for that role. When you hire that role, you need somebody who can see a problem, strategize it, and create the system for resolving it. Not just
Right.
that understands HR,
Mhm.
right? So, like, this is the same in every area of business. And it is to the point where this is why small businesses are failing, because we're hiring people who maybe they do well, they have great administrative skills,
Mhm.
but they need direct supervision all the time. They should be they're the type of person that should be in an office, yet you've got them working remotely. Like all
Wow.
of these things that they could be, and you're confused because you're like,
Wow.
I hired a good person. They've done really well here, here, and here. Why aren't they making it work for me? Because we
Mm.
didn't things when we hired
Wow.
them.
Wow.
And it's not people. This is people. Think about how complex we are.
Right.
Now, it doesn't need to be, it's like simple when you break it down into a system. So you make sure you don't miss any of these things. You make sure you
Mhm.
identify the right things.
Mhm.
And even for that, you ask yourself, okay, so small business owners, one of the things that makes us so amazing is that we will leap. We will take a step into the unknown. We will act, right? We take action. That's how we ended up in a business.
Mhm.
We took an action, and that's awesome. However, it's one of the holdups of a small business owner. Like they think they know what position to hire next, right?
Wow.
Like, oh,
Right.
I know I need role. But then let's talk about this because I already mentioned earlier, like a lot of businesses can't sustain the people once they
Yes.
hire them. So in a
Right.
new business, there are a couple of concepts, and one of them is, and I teach businesses how to do this. We break it down so that your first hires are doubling your revenue or increasing your
Mm.
revenue by a certain amount of money, right? Because
Right.
now they're self, whether they're an administrative employee or not. And then you're growing the business by that much money. And until you do,
Mm.
you can't person until
Wow.
you increase revenue by this much money, unless you have additional revenues. But it's going to run out. This is all a math problem. Your money's going to run out unless
Right.
you're increasing. So when you
Wow.
increase, you have to increase and how do you do that? Well, we go through a whole system. So the whole first half of the class or the course, and it's all delivered to you immediately. I walk you through the process online. There's videos of me walking you through the workbook. It's like an 85-page workbook that teaches
Wow.
you every aspect of this. And then I
Wow.
have a bunch of teaching you like all the things you never want to know about like the background checks and things like that.
Right.
And
Right.
then I onboarding course because if you're going to hire these people, hiring and onboarding are really some of the greatest difference makers. So I teach you exactly how to onboard the amazing hires that you've made, and all of
Mhm.
it I'm literally charging $19 because the
Mm.
idea is to mass market it so that it can change this foundation and keep these small
Wow.
businesses with no able to grow and stabilize. And then ultimately, as they do that, I have other solutions that they can, be a part of where they work more with me to help build their HR systems in place. And I have other digital systems. This is like the entry level system because it all starts with the hiring.
Wow. This is so amazing and this is so good. And Taryn, I want to say thank you so, so much for this insight and this wisdom. And for you, the audience, if there is anything, I would push replay numerous times to help get the education and the wisdom that she just shared with us on today. And Miss Cadena, if you could, whenever you can, shoot, if you could give us a link if possible, so that we can put that in the YouTube, of course, because mostly everything is going to be attached to the YouTube link. However, I will share the link on my other platforms as well, so that others can connect back to YouTube and be able to find it in that history. But this is some informal, hot off the press information. That's all I got to say. And I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, Taryn, for coming here. And like you said, it was an ordained and set time for you to come, and definitely now was the time. And I want to say thank you so, so very much. And to share, if you could, the is there an image of the booklet or no? Or is everything just on there? If you don't have it, don't worry about it. We'll just connect it to that link and let them do their own research. And if they want to, go ahead.
This
Go
I'm
ahead.
like, I don't have it pulled up this moment, but I'll send you
Okay.
something you can show on here
Okay. Sure.
because there's I have so many. I've I basically have been working. So first, I want to say yes. I will send you a link you can put in here, and
Yeah.
I'll also send my email so that anybody who wants to, y'all just reach out and let's have a coffee, whether it's a virtual coffee or an in real life coffee. You don't have to
Yes.
buy anything or whatever. If you
Yeah.
feel led to do that, I would love to talk with you. So I will give you my email that you can put in there.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, it's info at honestlybrandedhr.com.
Yes.
But put it in there.
Okay.
And so I'll do that,
Okay.
and I'll send you like a little an image or something for the. But what's really crazy? I started, or you can follow me on social, Taryn
Yes.
Cadena. That's really whether Instagram or Facebook.
Hmm.
And I started this series last Sunday that I think I'm going to continue every week.
Yes.
Let's talk
Yes.
about what happened in my business this week. Like that's
Yes.
how I started my reel because
Yes.
you guys, it's you wouldn't believe the mistakes that I make on a daily basis, huge,
Mm.
small, whatever. And
Yes.
it's kind of like we talk about the word saying like in all things be grateful, right? And
Yes.
so I think my way of sharing this journey because
Hmm.
say to me like look at you moving and shaking like you're this whole XYZ in the HR space and I'm like y'all you don't even know what happened this week. I screwed up XY, you know what I mean? And so
Right.
like
Right.
authentic and transparent. I mean to
Mm.
the point where my business is named after these things.
Wow.
I want to share the
Mm.
process because
Absolutely.
it's not about just looking great in my pictures, which I do enjoy. I'm not gonna lie. I like to have the stuff where I'm like, okay, I look how great this looks. It's
Yes.
wonderful to create all these
Yes.
things.
Yeah.
The point is for me is so much more than that. And
Yes.
so sharing this ugly side is
Mm.
so important because
Yes.
it's real and
Mm.
it keeps me humble. It's
Yes.
not this
Yeah.
curated
Mm.
image. That's what it
Mm.
takes to succeed on the digital platform,
Mm.
but it's not what it takes to succeed with the Lord.
Yes, ma'am. And just let me know what other platforms you're on, because I know Instagram. I'm not for sure of any others off the top of my head, if you don't mind. And I'll go
Yeah.
ahead and add that, so that, like you said, if others want to go in and contact you, they definitely can. Because, I mean, this type of information and also transparency is very, very important, because like you said, so many people have been so untouchable, or they make it look like they're untouchable, like I'll never make a mistake, or I'll never, don't use that word never. That's my key thing. And in all my years, I don't like to use the word never, because never can always happen.
As soon
So,
as you say, like, I will never, you better
uh-huh.
know that that's going to be showing up for you and you might just
Yeah.
struggle with not doing it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I want to say thank you again, Taryn, for just showing up. And I want to introduce the audience once again. If you popped in here kind of late, this is Taryn Cadena, who has so much insight and wisdom on the HR, perspective, but also she's shared her powerful testimony. So once again, if you just popped in, feel free to go back and push replay and be blessed by the information, the wisdom, the knowledge, the words that she's sharing, because once again, she's talking to all of those that are wanting to create businesses, those that are in small businesses, and those are in the business world, period. Don't take this interview today for granted. This is something very educational, and it will help you down the line if you have to. She is more than willing to answer whatever necessary questions or concerns you may have. So, once again, I'm going to wrap this up and say thank you guys for showing up here to Courageous Talk. We want you to push that replay button. We also want you to hit that subscribe button to YouTube to go to Courageous Talk and hear some of the wisdom, the insight, the testimonials of people that have gone through trauma, just like she just shared her testimony. But in so many instances, and what I got from this was that everything worked for her good, to build her, to strengthen her, and to help her have the endurance and the perseverance that she has to excuse me till today. So I thank you guys for showing up. I thank you guys for tuning in. And hey, until next time, for our next episode, we'll see you again. All right? Thanks.
Recording stopped.